Hi, everybody. Welcome to Zeal Zaddy. I'm Scott. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm the host of Story Talk, where every picture tells a story. Tonight, we have an amazing show for you. I think that if you are learning or wanting to become a tabletop developer at any level, or even if you already are a tabletop developer and want to learn some things, I think there's always opportunities to learn and get better. Zeal Zaddy makes products. Currently, we have 5e products on Drive Through RPG. We are in the middle of moving to Cipher System. We love Monty Cook's attitude, ideals, and support what they're doing really well. We had a lot of choice between Pathfinder, Cipher, Fate, Blades in the Dark, blah, blah, blah. A million of them, but we decided on Cipher. So today we're going to be talking about what you need to do if you want to become a publisher of TTRPGs or supplements. We'll talk money, royalties, process, organization, printing, online platforms, marketing, and on and on. There's going to be so much. I really would love to have this be a 5-hour session because I think that's what it would take to get through all of it. But I think everybody will get tired in a couple of hours and we'll need to take a break. During our intermission, I run a video that shows current TTRPG Kickstarters. I want to support the community, see more Kickstarters out there, not just Kickstarters, crowdfunded projects. So if you have some, there'll be info on, when it starts, if you want to send something to me so I can get on the next episode. Next week's show is going to be a very odd episode. We're going to be gushing over the products that Underground Oracle Publishing puts out. I love their products, and I've got a lot of people who want to come on. And I think appreciation is an underused power in the hands of all of us TTRPG creators. So we're going to give them 2 hours of love next week, talk about our favorite monsters, creations, planes. I know Harrow is their big thing, so that's coming up soon. But enough about me. If you have questions during the show tonight, just drop them in chat, but put question right in front of it. Preferably all caps, makes it easier for me to see. Unless the bot starts saying no caps, which I don't think it will do. I think I turned that off a few months ago. But every picture tells a story, and let's see what these stories tell us. All right, we have everybody here except Gerard, who's gone invisible.
Gone.
Are you there, Gerard?
Oh yeah, I was waiting to do a thing, waiting for you to introduce me. So
Okay.
I popped up just like this. Yeah.
So I'm gonna let everybody kind of go around the table and say who they are and talk about the cool stuff you're making and what's going on in your lives. So why don't we start with Michael and we'll go around from there. So we'll go Michael, Lot, James, and Gerard.
Hi, well, I'm Michael Varhola. I am one of the co-owners of Skirmisher Publishing. We're an RPG publisher and wargame publisher and publisher of system-free source books and novels and a lot of other things that's been around since 2001. And over the last, 22 years now, we've published probably about 450 different products. And we have about 410 that are currently available because once in a while something gets pulled out of the catalog or whatever. We can be found at skirmisher.com and have a pretty good presence at Drive Through RPG, where we never have anything that goes more than 3 days without becoming a copper bestseller, and where our city builder,
Wow.
a guide to designing communities, is an adamantine bestseller.
I supported that and became an adamantine helper.
Oh,
I think it's a great book.
You had to mention that, Scott.
Yeah, it's a great book. Great book.
Thank you so much.
All right, Lot.
All right, I am Ty Burris. Go by a lot Evenstar everywhere on the interwebs, and I don't have as big of a profile as you do there, Michael. Unfortunately, I'm more of a small scale indie developer. I have published 5 of my own personal works. The biggest of which is Aether Steamworks, which I had that and its expansion successfully kickstarted about a year ago. And I am an artist, writer, designer, editor, producer, and I also do live streaming for TTRPGs for a variety of different systems as well as my own. I've been in the field doing that for about 6 years now, and I'm a long lifetime GM and storyteller writer at home, working on actual, novels as well. But those take a lot of time.
It's a different thing.
It's significantly more stressful to me than writing for games, which is something that always has come very easily. So yeah, that's me.
That's very interesting. I'm gonna, before I jump to James, that we are doing something very odd for we're gonna have a Kickstarter later in the year, and we've hired a novelist to write a short story to tease the product when it's ready, and it's the most interesting, oddest thing in TTRPGs I've ever done, which is hiring somebody who doesn't know anything about TTRPGs but is a great fantasy author. So, I can't say who it is yet. I mean, once we see the first draft, then I'll start talking about it. But I think there's something very cool about bringing people outside into it. And I think it's interesting you're going from the inside of TTRPGs out. Beautiful.
Thank you.
All right, James.
Hello, I'm James. I'm 1/3 of Gelatinous Cubicles, another small independent homebrew maker. In particular, we make homebrew for 5th edition D&D. Right now, we're actually in the middle of our second Kickstarter. It's quickly coming to a close. It's called Tales from the Firelit Gathering, which we're very, very excited about. In general, we've been making homebrew for 5th edition for 3 years now, and have been going as like full time with it for about a year now. Yeah.
Your Kickstarter looks great, by the way. Very excited
Thank you
for
very
it.
much.
I've been sharing it, and I backed it yesterday, I think. So
Thank you very much.
hopefully you'll hit it, and we'll start hitting stretch goals. That's what would be awesome.
Let's hope. Yeah. What I do in particular as part of Gelatinous Cubicles is I mostly do. I'm a third of our writing team because we all do design work, but I'm also our primary editor. So I'm the second guy to look at every piece of writing that we produce, if I'm not already the first.
Yeah, nice. All right, Gerard.
Greetings, salutations, and hello. My name is Gerard Earl Balsley IV, but I go by Jeb, my monogram for short. Spelled like the Egyptian god of the earth, pronounced like the guy who made Minecraft. How you doing?
Good. You want to talk about Terracore?
Oh, absolutely. I'm the lead writer, editor, artist, and brain behind Terracore, a fast-paced action combat role-playing game set in a grim, dark post-science fantasy world.
Nice.
I couldn't figure out the other books, so I wrote my own.
Sometimes just you have to will things into existence. So once again, if you have questions, drop them in chat. Use type question before it so I see it, because I don't have anybody else helping out with the chat side. At this point, maybe in a few months, we'll be so busy every chat that I'll need a moderator in there doing that other than me. That would be awesome. All right, so I have lined up some questions. I have some that are specific to individuals and some that are just general. So I'm going to start with a simple one. When you first started out, you have to look back. Some of you you have to look further back than others, maybe 3 or 4 years instead of 1 or 2. What concerned you the most about becoming a TTRPG creator? What was the thing that scared you or kept you up at night? Because everybody has one. I know I had mine.
Do we want to go in the same order as before, or are we going to go just...
It's open.
free-for-all?
Jump in when you're ready. And
the thing that concerned me most about being involved in TTRPG writing was that I would spend many, many years working on this. Since I'm myself, I don't have enough money to pay for a team, to pay for an artist, to do all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So that I would spend all this time and fail, or that I would spend all this time and then what I made will sit on a dusty bookshelf somewhere, and the only person that'll have a copy of it will be me. That was my big one right there.
Yeah, that's a scary thing.
So real. I felt that one.
It still hurts to hear it because it hurt everybody.
The thing I was most concerned about, and it isn't really a concern, it was really more just of a nuisance or an obstacle, is that I never wanted to run a business. I never wanted to own a business. I never really wanted a publishing company. I wanted to write games. And for years, I submitted things to TSR. For years, I submitted things to Dragon Magazine. And I got a couple, 2-3 articles published in Dragon. I ended up getting a credit in 2 or 3 TSR D&D books, second edition ones, I think. And if I could have gotten 1 article a year in Dragon Magazine and 1 credit every 2 years in a TSR D&D book, I never would have started my own company. It's really just that it was a closed club. It was really impenetrable. You saw the same names again and again. There were 12 names, and you saw them again and again. And you could sort of try to get in, and it was tough. But all I wanted to do was write games. All I wanted to do was write D&D modules and slam books and stuff like that. And if I could have done that, I never would have started a business. And having to do this was my biggest source of apprehension when I became a publisher.
I understand that one as well. I just wanted to make games too, or be part of teams that were making games. I think I submitted probably my personal resume and some works and things like that to like 50 or 60 different locations and people. Got a couple of individuals who were like, we'll look at this later, or never responded back, or this seems promising, but you're not a person that we know. And it feels like the Hollywood thing, where everybody always has the same actors in their movies because they know they can rely on them. They're a sure thing rather than taking, some measure of just hope that this person's going to do what they're going to do. Kind of have to become big on your own before anybody else notices you, and that's hard.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, it's I don't know if this is a function of when I started or just our own different temperament about it, but it was, in some ways, it was the jump, like starting to make homebrew was something that kind of happened naturally. When when our company started as just a D&D home game in college, I was the DM and I taught some of my friends to play, and things sort of have spiraled out of control since then. Completely beyond what we intended at the time. Because we were all like game-brained people. We all played Magic the Gathering. We all had played D&D for a long time, or played other versions or other kinds of games. And so we were making stuff on a small scale the whole time, and was only turning it from that to something more that was like the worry. I guess it's relevant that we're all at a liberal arts college, because we kind of just assumed, okay, well, obviously we're going to make art. It's just a matter of how do we make that at all feasible in modern capitalism.
How do we market our talents?
Yeah, how do we monetize our talents? Marketing being but a small sliver of that.
Yep.
But yeah, it was a somewhat of a long process just to get from, okay, we're definitely going to make stuff, but how are we going to make that work for us?
Right.
Yeah. I suppose for me, the question is never that would I be making something? No, I always believed that I would be creating something in my life, video games, tabletop RPGs, art, something or else. It was not even really a question if I would fail, because I believed wholeheartedly, more than I wanted success, more than I wanted a normal life, healthy, well-adjusted, social circles, and all of these very things. It was like the will to power was very much, I wanted to be this. My only concern was that there would be nothing for me, or that I would never really truly fit in as kind of a outcast. I wouldn't be able to market it. The path would be closed to me, and no matter how hard I wanted this, I would have to conform or mold myself into something I would never be truly satisfied with, which is an absolutely terrifying, dreadful thought.
I feel that.
All right,
The
so
reason...
oh, go on. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
So following up on that, somebody then had to teach you the ropes of TTRPG or the business side. So who did you learn the most from as you started creating this thing you move forward into?
I'll start. So I jumped out of a plane without a parachute, basically. That's as an idea for this. I had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah.
I had no idea what I was doing. I just knew what I needed to do. It was more about accomplishing something that I had set out to do, that I needed to do in that moment. I actually came off the backs of a major failure in my life. I was going to college for computer programming in software design and engineering. And I ran out of money as a father of two and married inside of a city that was far too expensive going to university. And in that moment, I realized that if I wasn't going to be able to accomplish this and had no idea to where I was going to go, how was I going to reconcile that inside of my head? And I went, I can write. I don't have to program, which I still do poorly. That's what I'm doing that in Fantasy Grounds Unity for basically every game I make. I'm sitting in there and programming in my own games, which,
Wow.
maybe someday that'll go up on a website somewhere, or Roll20 or something. But that's more of a hobby than a project. But having that motivation behind me said, do it until you finish it. Just do one thing, get it done. That'll feel like you have some accomplishment in your life in this moment, and that will mean something to you, even if it doesn't go anywhere else. That was my big motivation for it. My game actually came from an idea from my wife. We were looking for a campaign to start with friends and family, and we were going to just go and play something different. And we're like, well, what have we done already? We've already done all these fantasy things. We played 5e forever. We played all these other systems. We've been in Big Eye Small Mouth. We played Rifts. We played Palladium Fantasy. So on and so forth. And we had a group of friends that always just did 5e, and I was like, well, why don't we do something interesting? Let's make our theme. And she was wearing these earrings that happen to have a bunch of little cogs on. I'm like, why don't we do steampunk? We haven't done steampunk in a long time. I happen to enjoy some ideas surrounding that, but I also was like a big fanatic surrounding the idea of more of a magic punk, aether punk kind of idea.
Yeah.
And what was going to start off as just a short campaign for friends and family at home, I started putting together in the way that I always have for making my games. I do homebrew all the time too, but the problem with mine are that I change the system a little bit to get rid of certain things or to make it interesting, or say this is what's special about what's going on in the game that we're playing. And I got really bored of sitting around in combat with everybody for 30 to 40 minutes, waiting for the next turn while everybody's staring at their phones and nobody's engaged, and decided to make my own game. So yes, again, to the original idea, I totally did it without having any idea what I was going to be doing or how I was going to be accomplishing it, and had to figure it out completely on my own when it came to the publishing side. There was a lot of pitfalls. There was a lot of problems that happened, and there was a lot of successes that I still have to try to give myself credit for, according to my wife.
Yes. Imposter syndrome. It's a real thing, but you've accomplished a lot.
I failed my first Kickstarter. My very first one with Aether and Steamworks failed. It did not have good enough artwork. It didn't have some design elements that made it pop on Drive-Thru RPG.
Yeah.
People didn't understand the game or what it was potentially trying to do. Everybody looked at it and said, well, we don't need that because over here in D&D we already have. And that was not the idea. My system was not D&D. It's a D20 system, but
Right.
It's vastly different if you play it. So yeah, I failed that, and then had to look at myself and say, you know what, I'm going to finish the book anyway. And I did it, and I played with friends, and then I came back, and I went again, and this time I was like wildly successful in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So
Lessons learned.
Yep.
yeah,
Oh, yeah.
Perseverance. Push through even when everything seems like it doesn't matter.
Right.
Yep.
So who helped the rest of you like figure out how to do this stuff?
I think for me, the biggest inspiration, what really got me started, was my friend Zachary. He got I just moved towns. I was at a new school, and always been kind of like this weirdo outcast. Was just making friends, and I moved school absolutely spirit demolishing. And I go up to this guy, and I have no real clue how to like make friends. I'm just fucking winging it. And this guy, he has this game. He just calls it the journal game, right? And he hits me with like, oh yeah, here are your 4 stats, right? You're gonna start out, and we're gonna roll d6. And I start in a prison, and I'm like this, this was 2015, and I just started like automating the systems and like breaking this guy's game. And it was like the most wild, insane thing. I maxed out all the stats. I was like this major power player. I had like demolished a huge part of the world just grinding magic by burning bushes, And it was through that connection, through just, playing this guy's other game to show like you could just make a game. You could fit it on a sheet of paper. You can run through it with other people. And it's like, it could be anything. That's how I got my start. And literally my game started out as like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure fan fiction, pretty much. It was like free-form, diceless, and it was like Matthew Coville after that, who was like, hey, here's this awesome system, D&D 5e. And I'm like, cool, I'm broke as fuck. How am I going to play this? I was like, well, you can look at these free
Buy
rules.
it 1,000 times. That's what you're going to do if you want to.
Yeah, and it's like, I'm like, well, okay, actually, what if instead I made my own system? And I implemented these rules, and I'll never forget the first thing I ever did for Terracore was like a food rationing system based off of like size and gender, like how many calories you needed to eat, like how many rations was it? And I'm like, I look back at that and I'm like, what the hell was this even? I can't even figure it out, and I designed it.
You're not old enough to remember that was the kind of stuff that drove people to and from Rolemaster.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there's the grim dark world. Everybody plays a variety of different systems that they're all kind of these really minuscule keeping track of information games. Some people love them.
It wasn't even like grimdark at the time, though. The grimdark identity would come later. This was like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. There was a guy named Metallica, and he was like, she could like bend metal with her mind. And everyone lived on an island, and they were like talking animal people who had like a mutant disease, because I was like, I don't know, I thought like, well, anthropomorphic characters are dumb, so what if they have like some ravaging disease actually, and it sucks. And I'm like, just all this like stupid shit. I got like totally like retconned all of it out eventually.
Everybody's
gotta start somewhere.
Everybody's version
like,
0.03 gets killed.
It was, Zach who told me I could do it, and then Matthew Coville who kind of guided me through. It's like, hey, here are these dramatic narrative concepts which are so important to like any game, and he was so broad, and even like the 4th edition video was mind-blowing, where he talks about combat and like what made 4th edition rad. I haven't read 4th edition. I haven't read 5th edition. I played 3 games of 5th edition, and all of them were like 1 session long. And it's, but just like, I don't know, his philosophy and what he thought was cool influenced me so much. And then like, Professor Dungeon Master, Runehammer, all the YouTube greats you can find where their videos come up. And then it was like questing beasts, like, holy shit, look at all these games. I've never even knew that there were this many games out there. And I think that's what really like inspired me. Like, holy shit, I can do this. I can make something real.
Mm-hmm. What about you two, Michael, James?
I mean,
you go ahead, James.
Okay, all right. I don't know. I kind of, when I got into D&D, I got very into D&D. So I started with 5th edition because I'm a wee baby. But I'm still the rules lawyer at the table, even as like I taught all my friends to play. Now they make homebrew with me. They've learned a lot. But I'm it was something where I delved into the system as far as I could, learned as much of it as I could. And it really started with me just like making a lot of characters in all kinds of like different combinations and trying to make all kinds of things in the game. And very quickly coming up to like finding all the things you can't make. And instead of taking the bigger step of, okay, I'll just make a whole system from scratch, it's like, okay, I have found a gap in 5th edition. I can spackle it over. It's like, okay, well, I'm going to keep building characters because this is just the thing I'm doing now. You find another gap, and you start filling these holes and like, okay, well, as a DM, I want to make them an encounter with this kind of a monster or with this kind of a strategy, and finding more gaps and filling them in even more. It's I don't know, it's definitely different from how you guys seem to have approached it, because it was only recently that I've thought like, okay, well, what about the basic system needs to be changed? But from the beginning, when I started in and was looking at like, okay, what kind of content do I want to make? It was something where I was at the time satisfied playing 5e, but I was like, okay, well, 5e, but like, what if you could do all these other things that they forgot about or didn't care about or didn't want, and filling in those gaps instead of making a whole new thing.
It made MCDM a lot of stuff, a lot of money.
Well, you know, a lot of what I was doing early on, James, was just like what you're talking about. Skirmisher started off as a 3.0 publisher, an OGL 3.0 publisher, and we introduced a lot of fun new mechanics that we thought were missing from the game. So sort of doing these patches. You know, feats were a big thing, for example, in 3.0. We released a concept called defects, and they were kind of anti-feats. And they were things that gave characters more color, but also some real impediments. And they ended up being really, 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 really popular. So we've evolved. Our mandate as a company, Skirmisher's mandate as a company early on was we will always publish for the current edition of D&D if we can get a license. We published for 3.0. We published a lot for 3.5. We published a half dozen things for 4.0. We were really enthusiastic about 5e. And finally, we got to the point where we were developing our own systems. My business partner kept saying to me, we can't be dependent on somebody else's system. We can't be dependent on somebody else's license. And she didn't know the OGL crisis was coming, at least not specifically. And then it did. But when it did, we were able to roll out our own minimalist TS RPG, travel-sized RPG, within a week of the OGL crisis hitting. It is still on the front page at DriveThruRPG. It has been up there for 8 weeks now. It's the only thing we've ever had that's been on the front page in DriveThruRPG for 8 weeks. It became a gold bestseller exactly a month to the day after we released it.
Wow, that's great.
I haven't done that before either. I mean, I have to tell you, this is not our common experience. And we've released one adventure for it a week. We now have, plus a German translation, plus a German adventure, plus a Ukrainian translation in the works. So we've got 7 products out for this franchise that we launched January 14.
That's insane.
It is insane. Our whole methodology and what we set out to do is evolved. And just to real quickly answer the original question, which is, who are our influences, who helped us? When it came to business, nobody helped me. I was my own. I had to figure it out on my own. Nobody knew why I wanted to do it. Nobody who was in a position to have a say wanted me to do it. That was an uphill battle. But today, my father has like a master's degree in management. He does all of our Schedule C's and taxes now. So I've now got that part of the business that I don't have to worry about. The guy who introduced me to D&D in 1982, he's one of my main developers now. So he'll always write, an adventure or something if I need it. My business partner is a technical wizard. So she handles all the technical stuff. So there's a lot I do. I do mostly layout and design and editing right now, and I'm our marketing commissar. But we've got a good team now where people have their various roles. And I can really rely on them. My biggest developmental influence early on was the fact that I was lucky enough to work with Gary Gygax for several years. So I worked with Gary on a number of projects. He wrote the foreword to our first book. The first book Skirmisher ever published was called Experts, and Gary wrote the foreword to that. He wrote the foreword to our edition of H.G. Wells's Little Wars. And then I wrote a number of books for him that were published by Trollord Games. I don't know if any of you remember the Daxian Fantasy World series. I wrote a couple of those. So being able to work with him was very instructive in a lot of ways. Though that said, City Builder, which is an adamantine bestseller at Drive-Thru-RPG, is based on a manuscript that I submitted to him that he rejected.
Bad decision, apparently.
That's a certain kind of help,
good.
though. It's like, sometimes you just gotta write from spite.
I've gotta say that there's a thought process that I just went through on your discussion there. When it comes to the way TTRPGs work, the way they're marketed, the way they're sold, everything like that, up until 5e, it wasn't the most successful business in general terms, especially earlier in generations. So the amount of individuals who could say, this is how you do it, this is how you do it right, this is how you get successful, I don't think they were quite there. So that does make it harder. I see that we have a lot of individuals out there now that are in the indie market, that are in these smaller group fields. We do have, publishers that worked off of their own products that were related or tangential to D&D that are now becoming big. But it just didn't exist in the past. So now we have experiences from these smaller niche markets and from the way that the big corporations run them now to look at. So this is the right time to have assistance with knowing what to do.
Yeah,
for sure. It's definitely a community that's exploded more recently, where in the positive sense in this case, what with like the number of homebrewers that are out there and that kind of thing. And I'm familiar with it in particular regarding 5e, where there's a whole like swath of homebrewers that came before what we're doing now. But just generally, there's so many, a rising tide raises all ships, and like a lot of other like fully independent game designers and homebrewers have
there was a
lot more success just with how many more people are here paying attention.
There was a question that came into chat, and I think we've answered part of it. A couple of people have, but why did you decide to create a new game system instead of building on an existing, non-genre system like Cypher, Cortex, etc.?
So for me, it was out of dissatisfaction. Again, I'm somebody who, when I'm sitting around a table with all my friends, I want to make sure they are having the best time they possibly can. And I was seeing experiences where people were falling asleep on the couch or getting bored or whatever, with a variety of different systems that we played. Nothing ever quite met what I wanted it to do. And like you had been talking, I don't know if it was earlier or what not, James, how you like to create a whole lot of different characters. I am someone who does the same thing. Every video game I play everything. When I played World of Warcraft for a while, I got max level on every single character class. Because I like to try new things out in a system, and I did that to death with D&D. It's been around long enough that I've played every single expansion, every single way you can do these things, and they all played the same. That was a thing that was problematic in that to me, because if you play a bard, even if you have a couple of different changes to them, micro ones, they're still bard. They're still exactly going to do the same thing in the game you're playing.
Oh my god! Oh, so true, so true. Well, one of the main concerns, Terracore started off as a classless system, and I did not want to add classes. I was very resistant to the idea until I was like ground down, and eventually they were like, no, you got to have these classes. I was like, oh, okay. And I capitulated, and I had to do a lot of thinking about what made a class cool, right? It's not like, oh, everyone has spell slots or something. You know, like that's just the D&D's way of making people unique. I was like, no, whenever you play a different character in a TTRPG, it should be like a totally different experience. It should almost change your die mechanic to some other goofy shit. Like, oh, you roll 2d10 now, and that's your resolution mechanic because you're just chill. Or, I don't know.
The important part to do with that is just to make sure that it's not something so confusing that somebody struggles with it. And that's the hard part of TTRPG design, is making sure all your systems work in tandem in a way that's understandable and that's playable. But like in my regards, that boredom, I really wanted to make a system that gave you a reason to pay attention when it was somebody else's turn. That gave you a reason to role play more. That gave you a reason to use the powers that you had in systems or in situations that were not just combat oriented. So when I developed the classes, the ancestries, and what I have are called quirks in my game, which everybody has these potentially game-changing quirks. You could have, hair that's as bristly as a porcupine's, and that's unfortunately problematic in your social situations, but gives you some sort of defense when you're. That was my idea, was that I'd have these abilities that could be used for a variety of different things, and I had it so that every time that you leveled up with a character, one, your ancestry is a big choice because there's levels involved in that. Two, your class is a big choice, which I've got like 30 of them now. I've got a problem, I'm sorry. And then when it comes to your quirks, there's 100 different ones that everybody gets a chance to kind of mix and match. So every single time you play, every time you level, you only get one ability, but you get to choose from 4. And I've commonly had my players come back and tell me, why can't I have 2 of these? I want that one and that one. I want both of these. These are too many good choices for me. I can't make a decision. You have to make it for me. Literal words from a friend of mine. Anyway, so I wanted my game to feel vastly different when you played it long term and when you played it multiple times. And I wanted my players to be able to say, okay, I have this ability that lets me interrupt my opponent or my ally to do this thing for them. And that means everybody's invested in everybody's turn. They're willing to watch what's going on at the table, and it's more teamwork based. It's not just my warrior swings his sword and suddenly that's all I can do. I'm done for the turn. And now you go over there and you go do your thing. So yeah, that's why I didn't choose. I didn't find a system that met what I needed. And this is from the business perspective, in order to make a game expansion or add additional content or whatever for another game, you have to know it very, very well. You have to know the systems already. You have to be able to make sure that you're going to meet their requirements for their game licenses.
That's right.
You have to make sure you're not going to step on any toes or do something that might turn out to come back and bite you in the butt in a court sense. There's a lot of that for a lot of those other games out there, and it was safer, especially for someone like me without a lot to give, to just do my own thing and make sure it was legally distinct and that it was unique, so that it wouldn't have these kinds of problems.
I think what motivated us. Well, what was the question? So I answer it properly. It's why did we start our own systems? Why did we diverge?
Why did you create a new game system instead of building on an existing non-genre system like PBTA, Cypher, Cortex?
My partner and I tend to be pretty analytical, and we talk through this stuff a lot, like probably all of you do. And one of the conclusions we came to is that mechanics dictate story. The stories you can tell in a game are dictated by the mechanics. That's why even if you love D&D, and I'm not saying you should or shouldn't, but if you love D&D and you try to use it to tell certain kinds of stories, you can't. It's really good in my mind for telling some kinds of stories and really not good for telling other kinds of stories. So that's why we actually ended up with 3 systems. One of our developers wanted to do a system that told certain kinds of stories, very combat heavy stories. Another wanted to do one more narrative in nature. And the reason we rolled out our travel-sized RPG ahead of all of these is because it was the mechanically lightest. It doesn't use dice. Characters have 2 stats. It is a cooperative storytelling game. And apropos of what you were talking about, Ty, people have to be thinking about what they're going to do constantly, because challenges can be accomplished cooperatively. So there aren't any rounds if you meet a bunch of bandits or if you want to break into a vault, or no, if you have to cross a river, whatever you have to do, it's expressed in the form of a challenge. And all of the characters can participate in the challenge and help each other. So there is no waiting for the next person's turn. The story just keeps rolling, and each player participates in it to the ideally to a great extent, but to the extent that they want to, and they have to constantly narratively be talking about what they're doing because mechanically it is so light. They end up having to really describe what they're doing because there's nothing to roll and adjudicate for. They can't just say, well, I'm just going to roll the dice. They've got to tell what they're doing, so they have to be constantly engaged.
Yeah.
So we did these other systems so we could tell the stories we wanted to tell is the simple answer.
Yeah, there was a game that I played that the first time I played it, you're reminding me of it, which was Atlas Games Over the Edge. It has a very minimalist system. There's barely a system. It's really a setting with a page of here's some dice stuff you can roll if you want. But it really was a narrative driven kind of game. And I think that's kind of the difference is a lot of people, I don't say a lot of people, some people they want crunchy, and some people want to, they're more storyteller oriented, and they want to tell stories through their actions and their conversations and their relationships than they do through the mechanics of what's happening. And some of them are even offended when those mechanics intrude on things like make a charisma check, but I've just gone through and I just had an amazing conversation. Why am I making a check?
Right.
Why do I need it?
Trip over your tongue.
It's just like peanut
exactly.
butter.
You know, like there's some people who are bothered by that.
And there's a lot of granularity there. I think it. Sorry.
It's okay.
Sorry. Even within games that exist, like it's a lot of times there's mechanics intruding on gameplay is definitely an interesting thing, and I think it's partly a DMing style thing. One of our own people is very annoyed when people do insight checks in 5e as a lie detector. It's like it's not for that. You can't do that. And so it's, and it exists on that small scale as well as that really large scale. And I think it's interesting to me to see these different games and how they, to see that there isn't like this really strict, like rules light versus rules heavy thing where crunch can be deployed in very different places in different ways.
Yep.
Where like there are games I've read that have very robust systems about like equipment and rations and travel, and not as much for combat because that's like the thing they're interested in systematizing. And it's interesting to me, like, where do people want mechanics and where don't they, and how do they want them to be deployed and that kind of thing.
The story they want to tell.
Exactly.
That's the crux of working in this industry, or in many industries, is finding out what people want, because everybody wants what they want. They could be different things for everybody. So there's a place for crunch, and there's a place for rules light. And if I was going to start over, I might have started with the rules light instead of with a crunch book, because it would have been a lot less time to write.
It's peanut butter. It's pasta sauce. There's no perfect one. Everyone wants their own unique flavor.
Right.
We got another question that rolled in a little while ago that I want to get.
I didn't answer. No. Yeah, to answer mine very quickly, it's because I like very idiosyncratic, weird media, and so like Lord of the Rings, Hobbit, I don't get those. Those are weird to me. The Hobbit I kind of understand a bit more, but like I don't know, elves. Those elves should eat babies. Why are we like hating on elves? Why are elves like boring forest people? You could do so much more with elves. We're just not giving them a chance, And so it's like, what's the game if you like XCOM? What if you like aliens and like going down weird rabbit holes about like sectoids or fucking, I don't know, nuclear physics? What's the half-life of TTRPGs? No clue. You have to make that yourself, and that's what motivates me. All right. Yeah. Next question.
All right. So this one, I think is interesting. I'm going to expand on a little bit. They asked, "How do you handle getting artists?" And I'm going to assume that I'm going to stretch out to artists, writers, editors, graphic designers, etc. Like, how do you go about... Sorry, my dog was going up a step. And he's old and overweight. You know, because TTRPGs, there's a big skill set required in putting them together. And so, you know, in this group here, we have 2 people doing basically everything themselves and 2 that are not. I actually wonder, even among that, do the 2 that are doing it, now that they've put things out, do they want to collaborate and bring other people into their process at you know, now that they're having some product releases and stuff? So I'll let you handle that one.
I wonder if I would even be able to provide anything to another person, you know? Like, what, art? I don't know if my art's that good. It's like, most of these people in the space are like, because I looked through the book, and even I'm like, these are some pretty dodgy pictures. I really rushed these to get like a 1 picture a day limit, you know? So these are dodgy as hell, and I would not do it again. So probably not going to be an artist for any TTRPG products unless I really hunker down and focus on my skills. And
a bunch of our 3 ebooks had some really dodgy art, and we always used to market it as reminiscent of first edition.
yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Oh.
So it's like, yeah, I don't know, like, what do I write? And it's like, no, everyone likes to write. So it's like collaboration is just kind of difficult because it's like, how do I have a really hard time following, like, I don't know, some instructions I can follow perfectly, you know, makes sense, easy to follow. And then some things I'm just like, I have no clue what I'm doing here. I'm completely lost. You got to help me. And you gotta, you know, be the guide here. So if I start a project with someone, it's like, how do I even know that I would do it? So it's like, that's the appeal of being an auteur. Is that you're just, it's real easy to depend on numero uno.
I understand that as well. Myself, I work well with people. I happen to enjoy, you know, bouncing ideas off of individuals and things like that. But I have found that the most satisfying work that I do is work that I do for myself as an artist. When I'm theorizing and coming up with something and putting it into a book that I'm going to be writing something for, it's far more liberating and fun for me if I'm not under a deadline and I'm also not having to recreate something 20 times to meet somebody else's vision. Working on a team with someone else also indicates that sort of thing could potentially happen. I would love to have someone edit my books because that was that was a thing, spending, you know, rereading it 20 times until you realize I'm not seeing anything different. I know there are mistakes, but I currently have read through all of this, and now I can't figure out where the problems are in it anymore. When you have a 400-page book, yeah. I wouldn't bring in another artist. I would bring in someone who was good at social media, who was good at marketing, who was good. And we had that kind of conversation behind the scenes. That is something that I would love to be able to have. But for me, again, it comes down to, hey, are you willing to work for all money that we're gonna earn in the future? Because I can't pay you.
Yeah, I mean, there are royalties for that.
Yeah, royalties.
Sure.
I feel bad about that, though. I've been offered royalties to work for things before, and I've been offered, you know, exposure, and none of those things actually put food on the table for my kids. So,
well, for the most part, exposure is bullshit.
Oh yeah, that's please volunteer.
Yeah, please volunteer.
Royalties, like, I think royalties are a good thing if you know that the company you're working with has a record of making sales.
That's
not
that trust.
Not making a product, because a lot of product gets made, but making sales.
That is true. If it is somebody who has a track record, if it's a group or a company or something like that that has a track record of success, it's far more likely for that to be okay. But I've worked with a bunch of other indie developers and put out a bunch of different things for them, where I put in hundreds of hours of work for royalties, and I don't have any checks. So
yeah. Speaking to the other side of that equation, we at Cubicles don't really do royalties because we all work because we are small. We don't have that like long track record of like, oh yeah, when we put our newsletter out, all 200 of those people are all gonna maybe buy a book. You'll get some of that, promise. So we work almost entirely by most of what we need from others is art, and we work on commission, or we get commissions from artists rather, because that at least this scale of artwork will take you this long, require this many hours of work, and so we'll pay you for your work.
How do you find them, your artists?
So I'm not the one who leads that, but my understanding is that it's a lot of trolling TTRPG spaces, a lot of searching through Instagram, and just reaching out to people and being like, hey, do you have commissions open? Do you want to be given some money for art, please?
So something to say on that is, where do you not find artists? As an artist, if someone puts out on Twitter or somewhere else, hey, we're looking for an artist to do this thing, you will be inundated with people that want to have their dream come true of being able to work for money while following their passion. Because art is unfortunately just not very well paid for.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of people who are willing to even bend over backwards and do way more for way less than what they are worth. Which can be a problem for artists. And in my experience, it often just comes down to what looks like the project the people are trying to make. And that if that artist creates what that person is looking for, that's when they're going to be more interested in taking that particular artist.
Yeah, I mean, as far as putting it out there to get artists, what we tend to do is we go to artists. So I don't know if I'm the best source on what should you do to be noticed as an artist, but it is very much we look at portfolios and we look at the art that people have already produced and say okay, they know what they're doing, they produce great work, they produce work of a style that we want in our book, because that also goes into it in terms of there are a lot of really great artists we wouldn't commission just because it's not the vibe. But it's very much we go directly to them once we know that we like their stuff. So I guess that's how we pick artists, but it's also something where, like you say, some people have rates that they're lowballing themselves, which is something that we fight against as much as we can. We do not have a massive budget, but we have enough of a budget that we tip well, because it's correct to do that. We do what we can.
You'll get a good reputation that way.
We need more of that in society. That's what we need.
Yeah. Well, we need more wages that make it so people don't need tips, but until then.
Yeah, true.
And Michael?
For us, it's sort of been a relationship building thing. We've been around for a long time, so we've just met a lot of artists. And one of our main artists is now part of our core development group. We meet every Thursday. We do a playtest session every Thursday. We start out with a 1 hour business meeting and then do a 2 or 2.5 hour game. And one of our developers is one of our artists who we've now worked with for well over 10 years, pushing 15 years probably. So she's just someone who we met and who did a couple of pieces of art for us, and then did more. And then finally, I just realized her look informed a lot of what we did. So we stuck with her, but we try new people all the time. I mean, I say all the time, maybe one new artist a year. And sometimes we end up then building a relationship with them. And sometimes they do one thing and, they don't seem interested in coming back and working with us again for whatever reasons, or we just don't need anything else that looks like what they did. So it's sort of an incremental build for us. We meet people, we'll give them a job, we'll see how it goes and if everybody feels good about it. And then some of them stick with us and do more stuff moving ahead, and some we just never hear from again. And we hear from a lot of artists, though. Lots of artists approach us. Once you've actually got a company and you've got 400 titles out there, we're getting approached by, 3-4 artists a week through our website. and we just can't keep up with that. We're you know, we'll need a piece of art, and I know there's someone who can do it, and I know what I'm going to have to pay them, you know, and I don't even mean necessarily the lowest number I could pay someone, but when I know when I can budget for it, it's easier for me to go to someone I know and say, Bob, can you do this? Amanda, can you do such and such? And just have them knock it out and have me either pay them or give them a royalty. Artists, we mostly just pay outright. But there are artists who have seen that we have people who've gotten royalties from us for a decade, and they're making a lot of free money every year for work that they did a long time ago. So royalties are not necessarily a bad thing.
No, royalties can be good. That's what I'm saying.
I don't say we don't do it from a standpoint of they're bad, just from the standpoint of we can't offer that.
Yeah, right.
We can't offer that and expect it to mean something.
We're trying to move away from them because they've gotten so complicated.
Yeah. All right. Well, we've hit the midpoint. Let's take a break real quick. During the intermission, everybody stick around, and I'll drop in chat links to the Kickstarters you're going to be seeing as they flow through. One of our guests tonight, James, has one up tonight. Please go check it out if you get a chance, and back it if you feel like you should. It's a very cool product. Wow, 2 backers already out of here. So
he mentioned at the beginning of the show, I went in and backed it. So
very nice. Thank you.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
We will see you in a few minutes, everybody. Welcome back, everybody. I'm going to give everybody a few minutes to kind of go over the stuff they make, so that if you're not familiar with their product or what they're doing, we're going to start with Michael tonight. Let me bring up his screen of product real quick. Give me 1 second. I have a couple of them. I'm going to do the first one, which is on TSRPG, and when you're ready to talk about the other thing, let me know, and I'll bring that screen up for you, Michael.
Is that just a regular TSRPG, just the regular English version of it?
Yes. That's the one that you sent to me, I think.
And are we giving that discount code to viewers?
And I am. I'm going to put it in right now.
Okay, terrific. TSRPG is the travel-sized role-playing game. It's something that we, as mentioned earlier, released in response to the OGL crisis. But what's really fun about it is that all of the basic rules fit on one page. We don't care how many optional rules there are. We don't mind how many variant inline rules we put into an adventure. But the basic rules will always fit on one page, and we include them in every adventure. So every adventure is a self-standing thing. It's basically a quick start for the game. So if somebody buys our On the Plane of Magma or our Into the Terrorium, A Rose for a Ratto, any of our adventures, they've got a self-standing adventure that requires little or no bookkeeping and doesn't require any dice. So that's sort of our goal with this. It really is a travel-sized RPG. You can play it at home, but we're optimizing all the files now for people's phones. The idea is that if you're stuck in an airport for a couple of hours with some people, you can just play a role-playing game on the fly with them. So that's our new concept. Came out January 14th, and we now have 4 adventures for it, a German translation and a German adventure, and are in the works with a Ukrainian language edition of TSRPG. And I think I gave you a copy of that graphic. Oh, and before we go away from if anyone would like to check that out, I will give away core rules for close to free all day long. So if anyone wants to check out TSRPG, it will cost you only 20 cents with the discount code I provided. So I want people to be able to check it out and see if it's a good fit for them. Cool. So the Ukrainian edition is something that we're doing as a good work. I was a volunteer in Ukraine for 30 days last year. I was part of an independent combat medic team that was mostly delivering supplies to people on the front or doing humanitarian relief. We delivered a lot of winter coats to kids. So that was a big part of what we were doing. But I was able to identify a lot of the needs when I was over there, and I started working with an English language teacher who's living in the east part of the country. So I'm not going to mention his name or specifically the city, because OPSEC really is a real thing. But he started using this TSRPG, the English language version, as a teaching tool in his classes. So kids from high school through junior college age, and they've responded really well to it. It's a good vocabulary teaching tool. And we decided that we were going to make this game available in Ukrainian. So it's going to be coming out this week. I'm halfway through the layouts right now. Cyrillic is a bitch for me to work with because I can't read it. It's tough to lay out things when you can't actually read the words.
Where do I hyphenate this?
So we're going to be releasing a Ukrainian language edition. We're going to release it on every site we can get it onto. It will be pay what you want at DriveThruRPG, and we will encourage anyone in Ukraine to take it for free. We want people to take it for free. We're developing this at our expense. We are giving it away for free. If people want to support what we're doing, if someone in America wants to support what we're doing, we want them to pay for it. And then next month, about a month from now, I'm meeting with this teacher. We're going to be meeting in Prague, and we're going to print as many front and back foldable booklets of this game as we can, probably 1,000. And we're going to sit in the Czech bar that does open game night, and we're going to assemble 1,000 of these things, and then we're going to take them back to Ukraine and distribute them at schools and to kids who don't have a device they can get on to be able to access it electronically.
Very nice.
Very awesome.
Thank you for doing that. I think it's really important to support causes that matter, and I think that's a really important one.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, let's go to James. They've got the hot product, the hot project right now. So
yes, if you want a product that will not be available after like a week, little less. So we have a Kickstarter that's live right now that ends on March 9th called Tales from the Firelit Gathering. It's a pretty broad 5th edition supplement, mostly based around player content and based around the idea of making 5e a game for everybody. We're very interested in expanding the ways that players can play the game of 5e. Like I was saying a little bit before, like a lot of our drive to homebrew in 5e from the beginning was from that dissatisfaction with the gaps in the system. And that includes everything from archetypes that let you play classes in new ways to gaps in rule sets where we have a feat that we're particularly proud of called Prosthetic Prodigy that lets players with prosthetic limbs have build that into their character in a way that makes it more central, more important to them. And so we're very excited for all of what's in here, and we hope you back as many times as you feel is appropriate.
8-10 times is appropriate for some people. Like
yeah.
Store, maybe.
Fun fact, you can just buy 10 of these, and that would be good for you and for us.
Yep. All right, why don't we go to Gerard?
Howdy. Yeah, I recently released a basic edition of my role-playing game, Terracore, the game of great power and even greater consequences. And I'm currently working on a few projects, have a few irons in the fire, between a new system for devils, which are demon-human fusions, very much inspired by the anime Devilman. That's currently in development, and a system, something of an SA system for making what I call character crucibles. Because funnel, you know what character funnels are, right? You know, they're not a tremendous name, because the whole point of a funnel is that you get the liquid where you want it to go, and none of it's spilling out. You know, so I always thought that was a weird name. And crucible. That's literary as heck. You know, that's very much. That's geez, who was the guy who wrote the Crucible? Anywho, that and Dungeon 23. I'm doing that. Still going strong. Working on my
cool
cyberspace dungeon. I wrote some crazy Silent Hill nonsense that had to be pushed back and inserting, and so yeah, I have all these various projects. The Dungeon 23 is the only one currently available for download. It's on my itch. It's under the name Omni. I can drop a link into the chat if you don't mind. And yeah, that's what I got going on. Other than that, not much else.
That's enough,
Hell yeah.
right?
Yeah. Just working on making the game as best as it can be.
For sure.
All right, Lot, you're next. You bring it home.
Bring it home. No pressure. Following up these class acts. So I am currently creating a couple of different games at the moment that are both longer term projects. One of them is actually very close to reaching Kickstarter, called Legends Never Die, which is based on, if you've ever played a MOBA game, things like League of Legends, Tales from New Earth, Defense of the Ancients, DOA, whatever, all of those kinds of things. That game is set for a beta test live on my channel on RFC this Friday, as a matter of fact.
Oh, nice.
At 6 Pacific Standard Time. We're going to be having a full-on 3-on-3 thing going with that, which it's a semi-rules-like game that allows you to play it over micro-campaigns here or there, or just pick up and play against your local friends at your table if you have a few hours to spare. So thought that was a pretty cool thing. I'm also in the I'm currently creating a game called Twin Six, which is going to be more of a Ghibli-esque fantasy rules agnostic system, or not rules agnostic system, a setting agnostic system that allows you to kind of choose if you want to play it in fantasy or cyberpunk or futuristic or whatever. That has a very, let's say, inspired system. If any of you ever played Disco Elysium or know what that is,
Yes.
if anybody in the audience has,
Awesome.
the way that system works, the morale and physical systems are things that have inspired me. The way that the dice rolling system was set up, I've got something similar to that in the works. So these are designed to tell stories that are sometimes physical and other times more mental, more neural. So again, those are long-term things. Other than that, creator of Aether Steamworks, which you can check out on DriveThruRPG. We just reached silver on that one, which is good for me as a solo dev. I'm very proud of that. So yeah, those are my big projects at the moment. So keep an eye on myself, my Twitch, and my Twitter to see information about the Kickstarter when it goes live, which I believe L&D will be going live on Kickstarter in the next month or so, and then we're going from there.
All of the art that I was showing, that was all art you had done, right?
Yes.
Awesome. And I do think that you have a really tasteful style to your work. And I think that, is a pretty cool thing. There's, some artists are stylists and some have a specific style. And I think it's kind of cool that you're able to maintain 2 or 3 different styles and really fit different feelings, in your art. That takes a real talent to do.
I appreciate that. That comes from the whole wanting to try every class of things mentality. It, however, does not necessarily help with the portfolio, although being able to show that I can do a variety of different things has gotten me some artwork here and there.
All right, so I'm gonna bring in another question, a really weird one, an off the cuff one, but I was thinking about it early last week, and I was like, man, I wonder if this is gonna change anything. So, do you think AI is going to have an effect on your game development?
I want to cry right now. I want to cry right now, and the reason why is that as an artist and as a writer at the same time, when we have things like ChatGPT and we have Midjourneys and we've got Stable Diffusion and all these kinds of things, I have been fired from 2 jobs to be replaced by AI by individuals who don't want to spend the money.
As an artist or a writer?
As an artist.
Okay.
The writer thing, I'm worried about that long term because at the moment I've put a few things through ChatGPT and played with it myself for a bit, and I can see the potential that exists there. Or someone who has any knowledge of the English language at all, or any of language at all, and even a small amount of writing can use that to enhance what they already have. Both of these things can be used as amazing tools in the field, but they both also share the potential of just taking away a writist or an a writer or an
Right.
artist's work, their ability to actually do that is potentially in danger, or the field is going to change over the next 10 years at the very least. But yeah, I lost $1,000 in commissions in the last 3 months.
Sorry to hear that. That is brutal.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. I find myself to be much more of a AI naysayer. I think it will be used by corporate interests to produce cheaper art that's worse, and cheaper writing that's worse. We'll see if the quality improves, but I think it's notable that at the moment we can't, as much as we can make ChatGPT produce a rogue archetype or whatever it was the test one that went around on social media.
Mm-hmm.
We do not yet have a AI that can playtest for game feel, because that's something that you can only really see at a table. Like, that's something that even regular humans have a hard time picking up on until they're like testing stuff. Like, that's something that we've experienced in our own playtests, where it's like, okay, let's make this thing seems really strong, seems really cool, seems perfectly balanced within 5e, and then we play it at the table, and it's fiddly, and it's annoying to play, and it's weird. It's like, okay, well, when you read it, it seems great, and when you test it, it doesn't work. And that's something that, like, we don't even have things that can produce writing that seems good. So that there's so much more, and all the problems that we still need to fix for AI are all the ones that are the hardest to fix for something that runs on numbers.
I have a counter argument to that, and that is popular media of any kind follows an algorithm already. Music has the same notes being used. The songs have the same themes and the same tones that become popular, in mainstream. Your movies, your Marvel movies, they're all done exactly the same now. So if we have someone who can train the algorithm to find out what that marketing value is, where that sweet spot is for these things, it is only going to require an intelligent enough group of individuals to sit around and tell this thing how to do this, and then it's going to be able to do it. Even if it's not necessarily the most original thing, even if it's not a Kubrick, even if it's not, a really neat and interesting idea, it can still pump out the same schlock we're being fed now.
Well, that's kind of what I mean when I say, like, oh, it's gonna make certain jobs be lost, and the product's gonna be worse. Like, there's an I think in the future there will be an advanced enough AI that can make, like, a mass market paperback novel. I do not think the great American novel or the great any kind of novel is ever going to be written by an AI until we literally have the sci-fi sentient person computer that you can debate whether it's even possible to make. I totally think it's going to have an effect on us from the standpoint of, like, oh yeah, people will not hire us because an AI is cheaper, but I am very much the naysayer that's like, nah, it's not going to replace us until they're people.
Well, I guess what I would say is I really can't speak to its impact on the industry. I mean, I'm sitting here with someone who just lost a commission because of it. So I'm not going to say, oh no, it's not going to have an impact on the industry. But I can say in the microcosm that is my company, it's not going to have an impact on us.
For sure.
That's because you have integrity. That's all.
Yeah, corporate jobs will be lost.
Set aside integrity, because I don't want to talk myself up as in that way. Let's just look at it from the point of view of motivation. I am working right now with the guy who introduced me to D&D in 1982. I'm working with my very best friends. Half the people, or all the people in my game development group, they represent half my best friends in the world. And I want their writing and their art and the experience of getting together with them every week. So I want to get together with Brenda and Penny and Amanda and Carter and Paul and my dad and develop these games. And in what way does it benefit me if I say to one of my best friends who's an artist, I'm not using your art anymore because I can get this other thing for it. I like paying people for the work they do. I like us sharing the benefits I'm a borderline socialist. I like the idea that 50% of everything we make on any given title, 60% in some cases, is going out to the people who help create those things. So I don't know. I don't think I'm unique. I might be exceptional, but I'm probably not unique in that respect. So it's not going to affect us. And even some of my friends who are artists, I've seen them bitching and moaning about this and the horrible impact it'll have. And I just think, I think I'll give you as much work. I can never get you to do as much work for me as I want you to. And here you are worrying about losing work. And it's not even a legitimate concern for a lot of people that are working for me, because I'll take as much as they can give me.
But that's the crux of it. You have a team. You happen to have a soul. You happen to have individuals that you wanna have be part of this thing.
That's right.
There are a lot of developers
legitimately speak to without projecting.
Yeah. And then we've got other individuals who are trying to do whatever they can. This is definitely more impactful in the indie community than it is for a pre-established company that's working with a team and has the assets necessary to pull in influences that they want from here and there. If you are trying to do art for the next Kickstarter that comes out from a team out there, or if you're trying to write for them and these AIs are going to come and potentially take from it, or if it's a big corporation that's cutting corners, those are the places where it's problematic. Not these, I hesitate to call it, but like the mom and pop shop roleplay group such as yourself that actually sets these things up. That is definitely not somewhere that I can see it making any changes, for sure.
Right. Yeah. The cottage industry.
Yes, exactly. The way the business should work, to be honest, but unfortunately the way it doesn't tend to anymore.
I would like to ask, before I give this, that everyone is very understanding, and maybe just hear me out, just consider this, that we are looking at not necessarily yes, this will change things, but much in the same way that automatic muscles were able to lift 1,000 pounds in an instant with the flick of a wrist, right? That's a crane. No longer do people have to move barrels. A robotic arm can move with such precision that now we can do fine surgeries. We can we can change the skin on a grape or that fine with a sewing needle. With some of these robotic arms, it's really precise. With some AI, for years, algorithms have been suggesting you videos, been putting tweets in your feed, have been building the world around us. I've been running auctions in an instant for advertisers on what you would like to see. We are surrounded by various labor-saving devices, and it is these labor-saving devices which have shaped and revolutionized the world. And we are looking at the precipice of the entire world changing forever. Yes, it will be dramatic. It will be transformative. There will be, unfortunately, things lost. Yes, that is horrible.
Stop telling me to stop using my abacus, okay?
So,
right?
Actually,
I mean, there will forever be a space for artists, I guess we can say. Some people believe that using digital art tools makes art worse. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think that's a little strange. With the digital art platform, you can do a lot of things, maybe not literally everything, right? You don't get the exact physics of paint drying, but if you know what you're doing, you know how to use the tools, you can get pretty close. So, I mean, but there will forever be a space for these previous things. Take, for instance, the candle. People used to only have the candle to light their homes with, and now I can do obnoxious shit like this with this stupid fucking bike light and make my face look like this on camera on stream. But people who want something that only a candle can provide will use the candle. People who want lighting will use the LED light. It's that simple.
I do have to recognize you're pandering to our AI overlords here. So, I mean, we appreciate that.
The HAL 9000 unit.
The HAL 9000, yeah.
No, it's in my background.
And the concern that I have is not necessarily, this brings up a statement for me. when it comes to things like art, yes, someone who creates human art will be creating human art, something that will be potentially full of heart and soul and the feelings of the individual and the mistakes they make that make it unique, that kind of thing. But what about the new artist who comes out into the field and is struggling and has muddy imagery that is just stick figures, and now they're looking at spending the next 10 years getting good at art when they can push a button and they are done with it now? There's a level of intellectual laziness that we experience already when it comes to the computational capabilities that we have. People don't care to learn math.
We are seeing that right now in the fiction industry, actually. There is a website, I forget the name of it. It's just like a sci-fi fantasy magazine, I think, who has very recently released numbers where they, once ChatGPT came out, their submission rejections spiked because of all the people that are people when given a tool are going to use that tool, especially if it makes their job and their life easier. So if you have a new student coming into the field, their art is all going to be either manipulating AI generated art because it takes a split second instead of having to learn months and months and months of how to draw intricate backgrounds and clouds, and then how to do the lighting and the dynamics that you have on this figure. It is a tool.
Yeah, I'm going to extend it out. I think that even gets extended out. It creates careers for people who had no career.
That is true.
It's
a difference in perspective and shift and in ideology, how we're going to be doing these things.
Yeah.
But we're arguing.
Yeah, I don't want to turn it into a big AI conspiracy thing. It was just
to bring it a little bit back to the question, and to sort of counterpoint the idea of like every new technology is like every new piece of automation ideally is getting rid of work that we couldn't do or didn't want to do. So, the example of the crane, like we couldn't lift all that stuff in one go before we made a machine that could do it.
When I was younger and I was dreaming about the AI automation of society, I was thinking I wasn't going to have to sit at my desk anymore and type on stuff or work and flip a burger or lift the thing. I didn't know they were going to take away the heart and soul of my art.
Well, exactly. What is the question? The question is not like, can we make a machine do this thing? It's a matter of like, okay, well, what do we want to automate away so no one needs to worry about it? And what do we want to do with our free time once that's done? Like, I want to keep making art. And that's kind of where it's like, how does this affect my business or my like engagement with art? It's like, sure, assuming for a moment that the computer can make something just as good as me, well, I don't want to just type it into the computer and have it be made for me. I want to make art.
So I'm going to do that. I'm going to use that, and I know I talked a lot here. I apologize if I am talking too much.
Okay.
I do that sometimes. I'm one of those.
I'm going to pull it back right after you say it.
So to refer this back to the previous question of why didn't we use a pre-existing open source group? It's because we wanted to make art, everyone.
Sure, right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Pre-existing TTRPG,
It won't. How do I put this? I guess I just don't believe in souls. I don't believe in heart. I've never been convinced of or if I am convinced that there is a human nature, like one set thing, it's like that of one cruel and wicked. I'm a very kind of misanthropic kind of guy. So take this with a grain of salt. I do not believe in souls or God or anything like that. But I guess I just never believed that there was a heart and soul to prune out of art, that could be taken away. Like, yes, I can admire the technique, and I suppose it's just that it's.
So you haven't cried in a movie?
I guess I have. Yeah, I have cried in a movie. It was Millennium Actress. That's a really good movie, and everyone here should check out Millennium Actress. So Kino. I wanted to clap. I was very tempted to clapping, but it's like, yeah, like
at the end of this, that Gerard is actually computer generated.
This whole time. I'm an android. That's the twist.
I was a robot the whole time.
So I am going to bring it back.
Why am I different from everyone? Because I'm an android. Finally, I can pull off this skin mask and reveal my true form. No. But it's like, I guess I don't know. I guess I'm like a hardcore Darwinian, and I'm just like, yeah, man. Listen, these things happen. The world changes. There once was the Prisacanthus. Does anyone know what the Prisacanthus is?
Some kind of fish?
It's kind of like a fish. It's like a crocodile. It could almost walk on its hind legs, right? It was the apex predator in the Americas before the introduction of mammalian, specifically canid life, pushed them out of the niche of the apex predator. And
So you heard it here first from Gerard. Evolve or die, artists and writers.
Listen, I love drawing. I draw myself.
Evolve,
I write myself.
Evolve to code maliciously. Kill the
Exactly.
AI before they get us.
I love the process. There are things when I draw that I realize about it, and I'm like, ooh, process is nice. No one can ever take that away from you. No one can ever take away the joy of your hobby. It's merely a matter of profitability. And unfortunately, these things tend to follow a certain path. And we are fighting against forces more instrumental than us. We are fighting against entropy itself, the law of reaching the energy low point, so to speak. Not to be too controversial to get into kind of weird philosophy territory, but it's like I do feel for you. I hate that you lost those jobs. That fucking sucked. They really cut you out of that money, even though you worked out a deal just because they wanted to AI generate something. Those guys are pieces of shit, and they shouldn't have gone on with you if they, if they were just going to betray you at that moment, right? That sucks. But this is just the way of the world, right? There are no more cowboys. There are no more samurai. There are no more this, that, and the other thing, because the world changes. There's no more Prisacanthus. We are always fighting to survive, and that is a very tragic thing of life.
Well, and I would throw in another counterpoint, and that is that whenever we do have a new technological innovation, there are casualties. But when we look back in history, we realize that they don't end up being the end of the world. That adjustments are made, and that things do sort themselves out. I mean, I remember when I was a European cultural studies student back in Paris in the late 80s, people were saying that it's the death of the craft of writing, that there are word processing programs, that writing is, there were people who 30 years ago were saying writing is dead. Because there are word processors. They were sitting around, not like this, because the technology didn't exist. They were sitting around in a cafe, and they were saying, writing is dead. If you're not putting a pencil or a pen on a piece of paper, that you're no longer really a writer. And we look at that and we know it's absurd.
It's totally absurd, though. That's completely different from having a different method of writing versus having something write in your stead.
Yeah. And
that is a little different.
Okay, well,
I do want to pull away from this.
But I understand.
I want to get back.
We have completely derailed you.
Yeah.
Why don't you?
I want to get back on this topic.
Back in the can.
But I do want to stick to data for a moment. I do want to use data. I wanted to ask about data for a moment. Do you use data in either the development of your products? Do you look at what's missing in the market based on data? Do you look at what's needs to be in the market? Do you make data-driven decisions in how to market, in advertising, all that kind of stuff? Or do you basically run dataless? Because I think a lot of mom and pops run dataless. But I think that this industry is full of really smart people who, even without much money, can find ways to utilize data and analytics.
We're much more Icarus than dataless, I would have to say.
I was about to make a joke.
That's true.
I don't know,
That's
what Greek myth has to do with anything, but
no. So from my small perspective,
pun in the West.
Yes, I personally use data to drive some of my decisions, but it was after starting to learn, what is it that will drive focus on my game? What is it that will make people invested and interested in it? I tried a variety of different things from, constantly streaming out information about my game all over the place. When the second Kickstarter happened, I took some of the events that didn't work so great for the first one. I changed my imagery to be more flashy. I made sure that I had a video associated with my book itself. I made attainable goals that I thought could be reached quickly on Kickstarter so that when they reach there, the algorithm starts putting you towards the top of the pile, and more people are able to see it. And then they're like, well, this is a guaranteed thing. I'm not going to waste money on it. I'll be able to get it back. I found I had a 5-minute video that described my game, showed some people playing it, gave some testimonials, and that's what I had originally. And when I decided, when I saw that it wasn't getting hit the way that I wanted it to, I was watching my YouTube analytics on it because it was a link to a YouTube video that I saved for drive-through. And I saw that people were dropping off like just about the point when my initial intro splash went away, and then people started talking. That's when they'd click away from the video. But I went, they want eye candy. And then I gave them instead a 1.5 minute long flashy, here's this, here's this, here's this, here's this, here's the art from the game, here's the things you can play, here's some cool music to go along with it. And then my the individuals that were coming to it, suddenly it just spiked. So there are some things you can do that help drive notice, and most of them have to do with, unfortunately, the human condition of low attention spans.
True.
Yeah.
I totally dropped the ball when making my promo stuff because of the low attention span. Frankly, I just tore all that shit down. I was like, I got to go back to the drawing board. I was thinking about making TikToks, and then I got banned for no reason. Literally, I just like made an account and was like looking at some of the content to figure out like, okay, what are people doing, you know? And before I could even make anything, I got banned for like no reason. And I'm like, okay, well, fuck this, I guess. I guess I'll just be a hermit.
That's a common thing on TikTok, unfortunately.
I guess with respect to data, we're driven by data to some extent, sales data. For example, if the sales supported us producing D&D 4E stuff, we'd still be producing it, right? And for some reason, inexplicably, the data supported us doing that. So data will sort of guide the kind of product that we release, but it won't guide the specific product. If one of the people on my team said, I want to do a TSRPG scenario, and this is what I want to do, and it sounded really half-assed or off the wall, but I knew that they were going to get the mechanics right, I knew they were a good writer, then I would just say, yeah, do it. So I would never tell somebody that was in our development group, the Skirmisher game development group, don't do a specific thing because the data doesn't support it, because you've got to push back against prevailing trends of thought, even if they're not going to be successful with it. And in this business, all BS aside, the margins between the thing that pulls really well and the thing that doesn't is pretty narrow. I'd rather people that I'm working with do the things they want, even if it's going to be marginally less successful for me as a business. I'd rather they produce the thing they want to produce rather than the optimized thing that the market maybe says they should produce.
Yeah, that's kind of the approach we've taken in a lot of ways. Is like we've had a lot of like Tales from the Firelight Gathering in particular. We had the most data available to us when we were putting it together, and so a lot of the pieces of it are remasters of smaller individual pieces we've made, and so it's the kind of thing of like, okay, what we had a lot of data that we could use to say like, okay, what things do we highlight in our marketing because it seems like people really liked it when we released it the first time, and that kind of thing. But like you say, like as much as you want to be a successful business and use data to know what people want, you also have to chase, like, in order to stay motivated as an artist, you have to make the thing you feel passionate about. And so it's been this back and forth and this sort of tension the whole time. The two things that you absolutely have to do to succeed, do art good, do marketing good. And what we've kind of done for the most part has been to decide what we want to make and then use the data to market it and to put it out there in a way that we believe will be the most appealing to people. You use the data to make the things we want to make best they can be from the perspective of people who are just chancing across and have no idea what we're doing.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to ask a big question. I'm going to go to the other screen for a second. and I'm going to turn on a budget. And let's talk about budgets for a moment. It's always fun when you bring up a budget, but I think this is kind of important stuff.
Sure.
So this is Jeff Tidball's, based on Jeff Tidball's budget, game budget. In here, it goes over all the different kinds of stuff you put in. It puts in, the costs for writers and editors and hourly rate for staff and production. Where do you think in a budget, a big full budget, most of your money should go? And what are the percentages you would break out in them? Art, writing, editing, marketing, what have you? Because really, when somebody is new, and if anybody wants a copy of this, I can send it to I can drop it in the chat, or you can just text me or DM me on Twitter, and I'll give you a copy of it. And it's fully interactive. You can drop in the numbers, and it calculates for you. But where are the places that you think matter the most to the products you make? That should dictate where your money drops.
We pay. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
You go ahead. You have more experience in the industry than me.
Well, yeah. Well, for whatever that's worth. No, I'll be brief. We pay. If we're paying a royalty, we pay a 20% royalty for all the text that appears in a book. So if there's one author, they get a 20% royalty on that book. If there's two authors, they get 10% each. Art, we usually end up paying a flat fee for, so that's harder to express in terms of a royalty. But there's usually smaller volume of art than there is a volume of words. So we're usually paying about 10 or 20%, 10 to 20% royalty for art, 10% for editing, 10% for layout and design. So that means 50 to 60% of what we earn on a book goes out directly to the people who contributed to its creation.
And the rest of that, yeah. I mean, do you use some of that towards production and things like that?
Well, the rest of it goes to a war chest for the company to carry us through tough times, or if we need to make an investment in something. Like, for example, we ended up last year, toward the end of the year, we worked with a great artist in South Africa named Bob Gravenstein, and we bought 1,000 pieces of art from him. Having a war chest. Having a war chest to be able to buy 1,000 pieces of art outright, so that's our operating fund, is what it is. That's the fund, and we give a certain amount of money to nonprofits. There's a nonprofit called the Gnosis Project that some of us are involved with. It's active in Ukraine right now, so we give money to it. We want to be socially conscious. We like to be able to spread money around. So the rest of that goes to running the company, being able to do cool things like buy 1,000 pieces of art, and being able to support the causes and ideals that we most believe in.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And a very little of it at the very end goes to me.
Well, yeah.
That's pretty much what it boils down to. I get paid last.
True leaders eat last.
Mm-hmm. Or eat barely at all. If you were under my budget while I was doing my game. When I ran the first one, I did not know what, because I do have physical copies of my books, and I wasn't aware of what the production costs were going to be like, and actually having to ship them out to each individual that was there. I think I had like 160, 170 backers, so I had to take what I earned from Kickstarter and have that just in production costs to send to other individuals. If I'd also had to pay for art and for editing and for writing, I wouldn't have made a cent on my game when that.
You would have lost money.
Happened.
It would have been worse.
So the second, when I made my expansion, I did you pay for your at cost printing if you're getting a physical copy through drive-through in that, and I made sure everybody was aware that that was going to be the case. I gave them the email, and they just print it themselves and ship it themselves and pay for their own shipping for the books. Which also, I mean, does put you on a little bit of an honor system, because now that they have that link, they can go back and buy as many at-cost books as they want, but that's fine.
Right.
Yeah, so, art when I went out to look for art for the type of stuff I wanted to do for my game, the very first individual I talked to came back with, what you're asking for a full-page layout for this thing is going to be like $2,000. And I went, well, I need quite a few of those. And then I went and obviously looked at writing and things like that, which I do on my own, but I'm just kind of curious. I had written 320,000 plus words in my book. So at the rates that those were there, it's just, if you can do it all yourself, that's the cheapest way to do
Totally
it.
is.
But it requires a lot of time and effort.
Yep.
Yeah, that's definitely something that, like you say, the more you can do yourself, the more you do not have to outsource and like pay someone else to do it. We've been able to do that with all of the writing side of things. We three evenly split all the writing and divide up like the editing and the layout and that kind of thing. Like I kind of mentioned, I do most of the editing. Trent, one of my patrons, does most or all of the layout, that kind of stuff. Most of our budget goes to art. Like in terms of like, what do you need to pay to get that you need for, your project to be successful? And because that's all the research we did, all the data that we found seems to suggest that you need to be eye-catching in order to like catch people's eye. Go figure.
If the cover of a book isn't flashy enough, nobody notices it.
Yeah, and that's definitely something where like you said like, okay, big full page piece of artwork, like that is, we paid like, I believe it was between $1,000, $2,000 for our cover page, because that's the one that like, we're gonna put this everywhere and we want it to be gold. We're very happy with it, and but that is like the budget that we have used to make our project go, so to speak, has been for art and occasionally other things. Because most of what we do as far as our own work is the writing.
And I know this probably varies a lot too, but as a simple question, if you can answer it, Michael, what does, let's say just a moderate, maybe not like a rules light, very tiny booklet, but something else. What is the regular budget that you probably have for creating and getting a product out there when it comes to?
So as half-assed as this will sound, we don't have a budget because we're paying royalties. We develop the thing that we think is going to work or the thing that we want to develop, and then we pay people out based on its success. And honestly, we use a lot of sort of group sourcing in our marketing efforts. There are things that no matter what people's other qualifications are, they can do to help boost the viability of a product when we release it. And we don't work with people who won't get on board with our marketing program. There's a reason all our publications are copper bestsellers in 2 or 3 days. There's a reason that we can turn a new publication into a gold bestseller in a month. And it isn't just that it's good. It's got to be good. That's the minimum standard. Being good, unfortunately, isn't good enough, and you probably all know this. You need more than it be good. So honestly, we don't really have budgets. We have caps on what we'll pay for something. We'll know that if we're going to pay for a cover piece of art, okay, this project, it's a war game. War games are only going to do so well. We're going to pay $250 for a cover that has both a front and back image and wraps around. So we have caps, but that's not a project budget per se. Yeah. That's just for discrete elements within it. Because mostly what we're then paying out based on the sales.
That makes sense.
So sorry, that's probably not a satisfying answer. It's a very forthcoming one.
Yeah, I mean, what I can say as far as our own planning for our now ongoing Kickstarter is that a lot of the decisions we made about that like main funding goal, like in order to do this project, how much money do we need? And that includes that was like this big calculation, this big discussion about like, okay, if we use these printers, how much will it cost us? If assuming the pledges are X amount, and the worst case scenario, which is where everyone buys a book and we have to print a book for everybody. PDFs are free, fun fact.
Right. The best way to,
Yeah, like the best case scenario for us would be that we fund with all PDFs because then we don't need to print anything.
Mm-hmm.
But so we backdated sort of everything of like, okay, so if everyone buys a hardcover and it costs us this much with this printer, and then we need this much for art budget, and then we want to pay ourselves at some point. And so factoring all that in, like, how much money is that? It's like, okay, that's this much. It's like, and that's how we got our funding goal. And then our stretch goals are all like, okay, well, to do this expansion to it, how much more on top of that? And it was a lot of sort of market research in the standpoint of like, we looked at like a dozen different printers, and it was only because of all the art commissioning we'd done before that we knew what we needed as an art budget. It's still most of it.
Yeah, to the extent that we have a
Mm-hmm.
budget at all, it all goes to art. When we do a Kickstarter, it's almost entirely to cover what we know the cost of the art will be, not
Right,
what
because
the
that's
cost
all
of
up
the
front.
other thing.
Like,
Yeah, that's exactly
if you
right.
if you want an image to go across the front of the top of your Kickstarter, you need that before it runs.
Exactly. There you have it. Right. Yeah.
So the unfortunate question of what does the budget look like for any of these projects kind of comes down to every project's different. You kind of have to have experience to know what you're going to need, and you never really know what you don't know until you run up against it.
That's fair. I mean, we didn't have like we did research on our own in terms of like what are the printers that are out there and what printers did other people use. Like we have a lot of homebrew books that we've gotten from other creators and things like that, and so we did research on like, oh wow, this book is really nice, it's got good pages, good color, like where'd they get this from? And that was like half of our leads. And then looking into like how, because that was the other thing that we sort of did was different printers are more economical at different scales.
Right.
Typically, they all change at different rates and they scale up, and as you buy in bulk, you do better. So it was kind of this sort of marginal thing of like, okay, if we fund at this level, this is our best printer. If we fund at this level, well, then we do this other printer. But all of that was done through, it's brute force research, but it is something you can do on your own. There's no like arcane secret to it. It's just boring.
It's mostly asking your printers questions.
Or just looking into what they offer.
And positive thing to note that if you're just doing this by yourself, if you're making this a solo passion project, you have no company, you're just working out of your garage, so to speak, then your budget is whatever you can spend on it.
And a lot of the time, it's just how much time you're willing to just put towards it.
But I operate at chump levels. I'm getting absolutely mogged over here by Michael, who is, God, king of this business,
Well, not by any means, I assure you.
Oh man, I had one sale of this Dungeon 23. I didn't know who it was, so I emailed them. I'm like, hey, listen, I think you overpaid for this project. It's a free download what you want. And my mom answers back, and I'm like, oh my god, this is so fucking embarrassing. So I'm like, she bought it. She didn't even tell me she was buying it. She just did it to like be nice. And I'm like, oh my goodness.
I don't know if you realize I kind of paired all of you up because you're different types of and different levels of development.
I mean,
and yet all with a lot of similarities and overlap too, when it comes right down to it, because we're all driven to do the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
So listen out here, Mr. Dev, Mr. Mrs. Whatever it is, Dev, aspiring viewer, you can do pretty much anything that you can. All right, and it's going to be valid. It's going to be okay. As long as you can make something and get it done. That is the biggest hurdle. Forget the marketing, just getting your first project done is going to be, very important.
The first step you take. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, I'm interrupting.
Yeah. The first step, the first step to being kind of sort of good at something is sucking at it and you're gonna suck, buddy. No way around it. I'm sorry to say this, but it's gonna suck, and you're gonna be disappointed, just like me, as I was at my game. But it's like you're gonna get better with each new product. You're gonna build that library. You're gonna build your skill sets. You're gonna be physically better at art. You're gonna be physically better at writing, editing, yada yada yada. You'll have people who are returning, people who know that they like you and want to keep feeding from that well. So you just got to keep going at it, and that's the most important thing. So don't worry about the data. Don't worry about the budget. If you're at scrub levels like me, okay, you can do it.
If you aspire to the illusion that talent is what it takes to be able to accomplish anything, you won't accomplish anything, because talent more often than not is just someone who has done something so often or so interested in doing it that they've gotten good at it, just like anything else you do in life.
Yeah, the most talented kid in art school is the one who picked up some charcoal when he or she was like 6 or earlier and just never stopped.
Just obsessively did it.
Yeah, talent is what we call brute force practice 10 years later.
Exactly.
You know?
All of the masters, Caravaggio, although he died when he was like 30 something, and he was the greatest painter to ever live. Fact. That's a fact, by the way. You can't doubt that. No one can deny this. He just had a guy who trained him, and he was basically kidnapped as a kid and worked in some studio. And that's how all the masters are.
Yeah, all the great masters
kidnap yourself and force yourself to.
It's what I did during COVID. I mean, that's what.
Apparently, it only takes 10,000 hours.
Billion.
Let's not talk about Malcolm Gladwell. This is
Malcolm
a almost clean stream, and I'm about to ruin it.
Well, actually, I think we've hit the end of the stream anyway. We ran a little bit over, and I'm totally cool with that. I think it was a great topic. Honestly, it's one I would love to have another episode on 6 months or a year from now. And, to me, this is one of my favorite topics. I don't think there's enough talked about the business of becoming a TTRPG creator. There's a lot talking about the creative side. There's a lot of talks about the writing and the art, and very few people come and say, well, what does it take to actually, put in the, have the grit to get it done, and I really think it, all 4 of you have brought, unique positions and can, the things you've said, I'm totally expecting it will inspire creators to start creating something. And if it didn't, then this show has failed at what it's doing. Its whole goal is to get people to create.
I don't think so.
So let's have everybody go around and say all, talk about all the cool stuff you're doing again. I'll drop in the links, and we'll close out with a bye when you're all done. Why don't we start with Lot? Lot's very talkative tonight.
Let's get him to shut up first. That's what I'm hearing right now.
No.
So I'm Lot Evenstar on Twitch, on Twitter. I'm also RF Chaos on Twitch. So Twitch TV/RF Chaos if you want to see some of the stuff we do. Besides having a passion for actually writing and doing art and all that kind of stuff, I do also the theater kid thing. So I really enjoy performance and acting, and that has given me a space in role playing here on live streams. So we end up taking a lot of our audience, and the things that they can do to us while we're role playing our games are very big and very broad and very explosive sometimes. So you are able to take part in some of the games that we play as well. This Friday, we will be running Legends Never Die. It's a 3v3, some Noxians and Demacians, seeing if they can get to a powerful artifact first. And whoever wins, I don't know, we'll give them a gold star. But other than that, yes, keep an eye out for my game, Legends Never Die, on Kickstarter sometime in the next month or so. And then Twin Six is about a year off. So that's going to be
nice.
But thank you for having me here, Zeal. Appreciate it.
I like that it's a year off, because in your mind you already know how much effort it's going to take, and being realistic about that really is a big step for anybody new, because they have no clue, and they're terrified of thinking about a year later, a year or 2.
I'm just terrified in the idea that maybe I'll die before I finish what I'm doing. I just got to finish it. There. Yeah. That's a motivation.
Good motivation. Yep, exactly. All right, Gerard.
Hi there. Yeah. Again, as I said before, I'm the creator of Terracore. There are no public demonstrations of it because I took them down. I don't have any social media because I hate social media. So you're just going to have to talk to me through email at terracore.official@gmail.com or message me on Discord. And I'd love to chat with you. And I'm not even sure I want to have a public Discord server either. And I'm currently working on all my products, making this game, fleshing out the rules, a basic edition, before I make something complete. So stay tuned. There's going to be double rules, probably rules for the other kinds of people on other planets that aren't just Terra. You know, you like Diablo? It's probably going to be something Diablo flavored. You like War of the Worlds? There might be something about that. So stay tuned. And yeah.
Nice. All right, Michael.
Well, I'm Michael Varhola with Skirmisher Publishing, as people probably picked up on. We've published over 400 things in the last 22 years, from comics and graphic novels to writer's guides, and lots of RPG supplements. People should check out our newest thing, which is the travel-sized RPG, TSRPG. It's easy to find right now because it's still on the front page of Drive-Thru RPG since mid-January. And I'd like to give a shout out, no last names or locations, but to my game development associates in Ukraine. I'm working on almost a daily basis with my buddy Jose, and he is helping direct the efforts of Ignatz, Dennis, and Masha. So thanks to all of them for living in a war zone and translating role-playing games into Ukrainian so that we can distribute them for free to people in that country.
Right now it's 20 cents. You will never cop something this good for that lower price ever again. So make sure, viewers, that you go and you get, you know.
And I just dropped the links in chat too, so
thank you so much.
There's no excuse not to buy the 20-cent product.
Right?
That's not even a cup of coffee. That's like, you could buy it every day a week and almost afford a cup of coffee, maybe.
Right.
Yeah, the milkshake rule. If it's cheaper than a milkshake, but more fun than a milkshake, like, why wouldn't you?
Well, I mean,
Exactly so.
it's hard to compare anything to a milkshake, though.
Hey, you know, I can enjoy a milkshake for a half hour. That's how long it takes me to drink it. But if I can play a game for hours and hours,
Yeah. All right, James, you get to close it out, and you know, good luck with your Kickstarter. I'm really excited for it, and I really hope you kill it in the next 4 days.
yeah, for sure. So, like he said, I have a Kickstarter. We have a Kickstarter because it's not just me. If I was the only one working on this, it would be a year from now or more, if ever. But Tales from the Firelit Gathering is on Kickstarter until the 9th of March. It's a big old 5e supplement with something for everyone. And we're super excited to put it out there for everyone once we find. All right. And,
Awesome.
and
It looks amazing,
Thank you
by the
again
way.
for. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Looks
and
good.
thank you all so much for being here with me and for having me on. It's been a lot of fun.
Good.
This for Gerard, this is what social media does. It allows you to meet people that you can then bring on shows.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, jeez. Oh. But you have to write things that people like, and then you post something, and no one people view it, and then they don't even react to it, and you're just like, dear God, what have I done? The entire day. It's horrible. It's stress-inducing. I might return. I'll probably return. I don't know if I could use my name ever again because after I destroyed my account, 3 bots came up. Those are not me, by the way. I have nothing to do with those guys. The guy was red-pilled and deplorable. I am neither of those things. Do not believe it.
It's such a good name. It had to be used.
I've got one reminder for the viewers at home, too. If the apocalypse happens and we have no more power, remember that you can still play TTRPGs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's true.
Or thing you'll have to remember sometimes.
Yes. Well, thank you, everybody. I'm Scott. I'm one half of Zielzaddy. We produced 5e product on Drive-Thru RPG. We're moving to Cypher at the moment. It's going to be about a month before our first product will be out. I'll start talking a little bit more about it a couple weeks out from there. We love having you on here. You can find us everywhere at @Zielzaddy. TikTok soon. It will be Zielzaddy RPG because, damn it, somebody had Zielzaddy on TikTok? What the hell is that? They haven't even posted anything. I gotta steal their account somehow.
If you'll ever have me on after that horrible AI blunder, after I publicly ridicule and shame myself,
I'll have you on an episode about AI, which I actually canceled an episode about it because it was so toxic.
Oh gosh.
Like, I could not get anybody to defend it. I could only get people to argue against it. Not that I wanted to defend it. I just wanted the other side of the story.
genuine robot
oh my God.
here who
So
will
now I know somebody will
AI,
defend it.
who will, hey, listen. You know, you're a great artist. You're an artist. You know, AI is probably gonna be sucking up some jobs for you guys. But don't worry, all of you are literally better artists than me. All right. So whenever it's like we're being pushed through the grinder, I'm at the bottom of that stack. All right. I'm going in first. All right. I'm just giving you a heads up. All right. The world's gonna change, and I don't necessarily like it, but that's just how it is. So that's all I was trying to say.
Well, good night, everybody. This will be up on YouTube probably on Wednesday, along with the podcast, and we'll see you next week to gush about Underground Oracle Publishing's product and team and community, because we don't give out enough love in this world. So let's change that a little bit. See you next week.
Peace out.
Bye, everybody.
Have a great day. Oh wait, shit. Whoops.
Bye-bye.
That was the wrong one. Sorry to our British viewers. You take care.